YouTube, welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, welcome aboard. We hope you enjoy the videos. If you do, don't forget to give us that thumbs up. Share them with your friends, and please subscribe. We're trying to get to that 1,000 subscriber mark, and if you could help us do that, we'd really appreciate it. So thank you in advance. So today's project is to do a little service on our John Deere LA-175. Now, we bought this machine, I want to say, probably 3 years ago for 50 bucks from a guy who sold it because it had an oil leak, and the leak was a oil pan gasket that was leaking on the motor. So we pulled that out, changed that out on the engine, and put it back together, and it's been running pretty good ever since. It's got about 856 hours on it, and we've got it with maybe, it had to be probably like 780, almost 800 hours, something like that. It's been a good little machine. I mean, it's got a 54-inch mower deck on it, which could use some use a little love. As far as maintenance goes for today, looks like the last time we changed the oil in this was in September of 21, so that's pushing 2 years, not quite. And we're going to we've got some problems with the tires. They're not really holding air, so we're going to throw some slime in those. And we've got a transmission belt underneath, which likes to fall off periodically. So I think what we'll do with that is we'll take a look at that belt, maybe replace that, and the transmission in the back. Now, anybody that's owned these John Deere hydrostatic little mowers know that the transmissions have a tendency to go, and when they do, they don't go uphill, or when they heat up, they don't perform right. So I've rebuilt a couple of these, and they're pretty easy to rebuild, even though they say they're not rebuildable, but you can buy the parts for them. I'm not going to rebuild this one. I don't think it needs it, but I think I am going to drop it down and change the oil. Again, that's something that they don't show you how to do in the manual, but it's pretty simple to do. And we'll take a look at the oil and see if there's a lot of metal in it or whatever, and get a little idea of, I think, how well the transmission's doing. And then we'll replace it with some fresh tranny oil for this thing. And then I think it'll be back in service. So oil change, transmission change, check the belt, fill the tires with some slime, and get this machine back up and running. So let's get to work. All right, let's start changing the oil on this thing. The fuel filter doesn't look too bad. If I got one, maybe I'll swap it out. Well, oil doesn't look all that bad for being almost 2 years old. You know, one thing I always like to do, and I don't know if they don't come with them, is I always put a little valve on the gas line, so when you want to change stuff out, you don't have to like get gas all over the place, or at least minimize it. I got an extra fuel filter laying around, so what the heck. All right, let's take these wheels off, and we can get into the removal of the transmission. So just a question of disconnecting the linkages and the brackets, and then unbolting it from the chassis. So let's get this chassis jacked up here. And so it's just a question of removing the brackets and unbolting it from the chassis. So let's get the chassis blocked up here. So there's your little hydrostatic transmission in this little John Deere. Got a couple linkages to take off. That belt has definitely seen better days, so we'll be replacing that. And I probably should get this thing stabilized a little bit. Okay, it's out. So all we got to do now is we'll pressure wash it, clean it up, drain the oil out, replace it with some fresh oil, and then put it back together. And the only thing we'll probably do is additional is put a new belt on it. Yeah, so that's just finishing the draining of the oil out of it. It's about, I want to say, maybe 2 quarts, I think is what it holds. If you take a look at the magnet here, it doesn't have a ton of shavings on it. There's actually 2, maybe 3. There's at least 2. There's this one that sits sort of on the top, and I'll show you that when we go to refill it. And then there's another one inside this case down here in the bottom, because this is the bottom we're looking at. And the only way you get to that one is you got to take all the bolts out, and we're not going to do that to take it all apart, basically for a rebuild. So once it finishes draining out, we'll flip it over, we'll clean up the magnet here, we'll refill it with some fresh fluid, and put the cap back on. And yeah, I didn't film it because it wasn't all that big a deal to pop a cap off and watch the oil drain out into the bucket I got here. So at any rate, once that finishes draining out, we'll flip it up and fill it back up and get it back ready for install. All right, there she is. Okay, so that's your vent. It's got a little bit of oil because it was flipped upside down. There's your fill. Here's your magnet with its little holder. It's been cleaned up. It goes right in like this. There's your cap, which sits on top like that. It just looks like it's in pretty good shape. So let's fill it up. So what they recommend is 5W50 for these little hydrostatic transmissions. So synthetic. So that's what we got. So let's fill it up. So we put the cap on, filled it up, ready to be reinstalled. So I just took off the drive belt as long as we got the transmission and everything apart. And you can really see, I mean, look at that. You can see that or not? And that thing is just waiting to go. I mean, it's all cracked. It's got to be original. It's got 800 and some hours, right? 850 something. So you can just see how bad this belt was, in dire need of changing. And here's our new one. See, a little better condition. So let's get this new drive. Oh, and by the way, if you're ever going to do one of these drive belts, it's really a pain in the neck. If you're ever going to do one of these drive belts, I didn't video it. If you're ever going to do one of these drive belts, I didn't video it because I didn't think it was going to be that big a deal. I haven't replaced one in quite some time. But if you're ever going to do it, I mean, you gotta do all sorts of things. You gotta move the drive shaft up to get the belt off. You gotta take basically the PTO for the blades. You gotta disconnect that, take the bracket off. You gotta loosen up back in there the pulleys for it. It just seems it's a lot more work than it really needed to be, but we'll put it back together and get it running. So to bring it up to date, we've got our new belt in. We've got our steering reconnected. And now we're just going to put this transmission unit back in place, hook up the linkages. We should be good to go. All right, transmission's back in. Looking pretty good. What we got to do is put the tires on, start her up, take her out for a test drive. So this is all set. We just finished putting the fluid back in the transmission, 5W50 weight oil. That's the hydrostatic fluid for this machine they recommend. So let's see how she works. All right, well, I guess that completes the job. Changed the oil, changed the filters, changed the oil in the transmission, put that back together, Got it all fired up. Get a little test drive. Everything looks like it's functioning as it should. So until next time, hope you liked the video. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. We'd appreciate that. And we'll see you next time.